trying to prophesize hope, you have to adopt the Marxian theory of reviewing history and analyzing the present to predict the future. I do know as a fact that since I left in 2019, Nigerian sports had gone down completely. They have never smelled where the World Cup is, just smelling it. And there is no hope. I'm not a prophet of them. I would have loved my country. There is no hope they will even smell it this time, because they are already at the bottom of the table. So if you want to know whether all is well with sports, you go and take my handing over notes. I left Nigeria champion of 10 African champion in 10 sports. I left unbeatable world records that are nowhere to be found. Nigeria maintained consistently world championship in Scrabble. I don't know whether we are there. And they won under my watch. When I became a minister, the only sport in Nigeria that was on was the female football. And they continued and sustained the championship under my watch until I left. I added 9 additional sports, including cricket, which was nowhere. Cricket became African champion and went to the World Cup. The Tigers left an unbeatable world record in Spain World Cup, where they became the first African country to qualify to quarterfinals in 100 years. They moved their ranking from number 32 in the world to number 8. Demolition. Greece, Turkey, Argentina. They were heading to teach the Americans a lesson before the whole thing turned topsy-turvy. I left sports with very, very giant records. Nigeria was everywhere in sports when I left in 2019. This same Tigers, they qualified for the World Cup before I left office. They were banned. When it was time for them to go to World Cup, they were banned. And they were banned because when they made that world record in Spain, I approached the president, who approved 1 billion naira for them, so that to compensate what they did for the country. The monies were not ready before I left office. They were released in August 2019. And the girls were not paid for over 2 years. And when they started complaining, the sitting minister, who is now the SA to the president, banned Nigeria, and our qualification was taken and given to Senegal. Thank God the girls are still coming up. They have won the African Championship, and of course the president has tried to compensate for the injustice wreaked on the team, even though the beneficiaries are not the same. But it's compensation. Why I'm not quite worried about the money lavished on them is because they deserve it. These are people that this same Nigerian state had humiliated and maltreated. These young girls from the scratch brought to women basketball to world standard. And for somebody, just because he could not be able to pay them their money, and they complained, they were banned. Federal government did not do anything about that. So if you want to know the health of sports, the changes, to me, having the National Sports Commission back, is a healthy development. But abolishing the Ministry of Sports is one of the worst decisions this government has done. Sports is diplomacy, and sports is international diplomacy. The Minister of Sports sits on the bodies of so many international agencies as a minister. The Minister of Sports speaks on the policies of sports in the cabinet. As it is now, sports have no representation in the cabinet. While the youth have, sport doesn't have. And sports is the greatest provider for quick employment and wealth for the youth. Sport is a multi-trillion-dollar enterprise. It is only sports that can create a billionaire in six months. 6 months. And this is the same industry that has no representation in the council. The chairman of the National Sports Commission is not a cabinet member. He's not. You can only be a member of the cabinet if you pass through the tripartite process. You are nominated, screened, and appointed. The chairman of the National Sports Commission walked up and had his name announced, and he resumed job. He cannot exercise the powers of a minister. He cannot even sit at international bodies where we have the status to speak for Nigeria. He can't. Can only go there on a representative basis. And when ministers of sports are meeting, he cannot go. Can't sit there. This is the truth. He can't sit there. I chaired the African Sports Ministers Forum to 2019. So I know the politics, the global politics of that office. So it's a worst decision. And I think the president should return the ministry, so that the sports can have a voice. The chairman of the National Sports Commission can only have to go through so many routes, like a bandit route, to get the president. You have to go Irigimarolo. When I was a minister of Youth and Sports Development, the ministry, which was later handed over to 3 ministers who could not manage. And it's because of the inability of 3 ministers to manage that ministry that President Tinubu scrapped sport. Because there were 3 ministers there. That same office that I held. And I think what has made sports to go down is Nigerian media. When I was appointed, the Nigerian media and press screen every activity. Even if I laughed in the public, they screen it. So is this screening by the Nigerian media that put me on my toes? Of course, it could be that they were angry with my khaki dress, because they expected me to have one suit and look like how they think ministers of sports should look. But I knew sports very well. When I was appointed, I knew sports is like Gaza. Hamas are there. The Hezbollah are there. The Houthis are firing missiles outside. They are there. Israel, they're there. So if I want to survive, I will have to dress like a refugee. I will have to dress like a refugee in Gaza so that I can carry a pan and be begging for food to survive. And because I was wearing khaki, they underestimated my capabilities. And that was what that trouble they had with me. Because every evil they were planning it even in my presence, assuming that what did he know? But I went to sports with the training, political training given to me by my mentor, Chief Solomon Lal. Chief Solomon Lal told me, one of the last models he gave me before he passed on, he said, if you go to the community of corn people, play the fool. So I asked him, I said, why must I play the fool? And he said, no. If you exhibit smartness, you will not survive. Because they are corn people. But if you play the fool, in your presence, they will contrive plan to eliminate you, and they will assume you don't know, and you will never be killed. So that was how I survived sports. Every evil plan, they do it, they assume that Solomon Dalun doesn't know anything. But I was looking at them as fools, because you can't tell me that somebody who has a master's in law degree, who was a lecturer, and my students are now senior advocates of Nigeria, who was a chairman of a local government, an appointed minister, and you will assume that because, oh, he looks humble, then he doesn't know anything. I think that was the greatest doing. The last thing about the bad relationship is that I believe in accountability and transparency. I also recognize that human beings have their shortcomings, so I always create room as a leader to accommodate human shortcomings. But I don't compromise accountability. Even in the course of your accountability and there are expressed human shortcomings, I can tolerate it. But for you to blatantly bold-face and say, no, you can go to the president and collect billions for us, but you cannot ask us to account. That was the beginning of the trouble. Not that I hate anybody, no, they are very wonderful and amazing personalities. But I think this tradition of using ministers to collect money for them that they will not account is what created the problem. And sports is the only ministry that the actors pray and fast for failures more than success. Because in sports, if you are going for an international competition, there is tripartite funding. If you are going for World Cup, FIFA will provide funds for the training and competition. The state governments and private sector will provide funds. And then the federation will write the federal government. So there are 3 budgets, and all will be funded. All. There is no international competition that is not funded by the organizing committee. There's none, even Olympics. But all these funds coming from outside drops quietly into the pockets of the federation leaders. If you ask questions, it's interference. So these were some of the things that Solomon Dalun was asking questions, and the media was used as a weapon to scrutinize. So as they were scrutinizing, they thought I was going to be bitter. No, as a Democrat, what they did was what helped me to succeed. So I give kudos and send the greatest appreciation to the Nigerian media for on a mischief of trying to bring me down, and they set me on the path of greatness.